All right, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about Cubism. And one of the guys that was the founders of Cubism was Mr. Pablo Picasso. With him and George Braque, that were really the founders of this style. And with Cubism, there's a couple different ways to look at Cubism. You can look at it to where you're seeing multiple viewpoints of the same image on the same canvas or the same ultimate screen. And what that does is it gives you kind of an odd look at things. The other way to look at Cubism is having the things kind of very geometric and squared off, which is kind of what we see with this self-portrait here from 1907. And that's kind of in the early 1900s is when Cubism really began to take place. What is considered to be the first known Cubist piece is this here. It's Les Demoinelles De Avignon, done in 1907, and it's some models standing in his studio, and some of them have some kind of African style face masks, but you can see everything is very disjointed. You have what is a forward facing face, but you have a side profile nose, and you're starting to see some of that things where you see multiple images or multiple angles from the same thing. Here we've got a painting from 1909. It's the factory at Horta del Ebro. And again, you can see the basic shapes are still there, but they are broken down, and the angles of things are changed, and everything looks kind of flat instead of trying to make it look very realistic and where the colors are real, where you get something that's very, very flat and angular and very geometric. And we're just going to flip through some of these here. This is a portrait of Daniel Henry Conweiler from 1910. This is in Chicago at the Art Institute, actually. You can see where it's still a portrait. You can tell that it's a person, but his features are very, very distorted. You can kind of see a forward face here. You can see the hair kind of done sideways, and you can see some stuff sitting around him, like on what would be a table or some things in the background. But it's very angular. It's very non-specific as far as what you're seeing. All right, here, this is the Three Musicians which is in the Museum of Modern Art, which is in New York. This is one of his more famous Cubist paintings. You can see it's very, very flat as far as the values and just how things are kind of stacked on top of each other. You can tell that there is space to it because of how things are overlapped, but you can see that you've got three different people here, and they're playing three different instruments. Okay, and then we're going to flip here. This is the portrait of Doramar. This is in the Musée Picasso in Paris. Again, we can see we've got a side profile face here, and this eye is actually pointed in the other direction. We have a forward-facing eye here. You can see her hands are very elongated and kind of very stylized. Everything is very hard-edged, very geometric. The colors are, it's kind of flat as far as how things are done, but it's very, there isn't a whole lot of blending. We have this highlight of the cheek is here next to another thing, next to another plane. So instead of it being blended shadows and shading, it's kind of a hard edge. And this is the Weeping Woman. This is at the Tate in London. Again, you can see multiple different viewpoints looking from the same angle, or from the same forward face, which you've got things that go from the side. Again, very angular. The colors in this particular one are very bright, but again, you've got one color is isolated kind of to each individual section. And then here is Jacqueline with flowers. This is in the Jacqueline Picasso collection. Again, a very long neck, very stylized. This one, the background isn't nearly as complicated as some of the others, but again, it is still very, very hard edges for where all of the different sections are, and it's very unique as far as how it is laid out. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a drawing of an object or a person, whatever you decide to do with this. But we're going to be doing it from multiple viewpoints on one thing. So there's a couple ways that we can go about this. We can take one image and end up with something like this. So where we've got a silver tea kettle with the lid kind of twisted on the side here, and you've got the handle coming up and around. But also, so we got the spout over here on this side. We also have a spout that's right here on this side, and we have the handle coming down at us where it's just kind of chopped off. You don't necessarily have to show the entire thing because I've got the handle here has gone away. But so we've got the tea kettle in the background with the little spigot here. The spigot has become the head of a person that's sitting next to it, which is working on a drawing of the tea kettle that he's sitting in front of, and has the starts of him being there. So the way that we got to this, okay, is I looked at the tea kettle, kind of got it sketched out. So we're going to have our thumbnail here. Rectangle that off. So had one view of the tea kettle, and I'm just going to rough this in so you kind of get the idea of it. So here's the tea kettle, here is the handle, here is the spout. Yeah. Okay, so here's one view of it and just kind of roughed out. So then what you can do is come in with another color, which is kind of what I did with this. You got the same basic shape where I was working with, but I changed the angle of the handles. So you can use another color, or you can just kind of press a little bit harder. So for this, I came in, we'll just press harder here for this portion of it. So that's a handle coming up. We got the spout here, and we're going to give it a little bit of a funky bend just to show that it's not exactly in front of us. And then we've got the opening here with the lid like this. Okay, so I've got kind of two different views. I can see two different variations or values here. If you want to use different colored pencils, that's fine. And then just kind of drew in from there. So that's kind of one way to do it. A different way to go about this is to look at an image. So in this case, we used a guitar, and look at it in multiple views. So here we have a back view of a guitar. And it's very angular, kind of goes along with the style of Cubism. Okay, so there's one view. And then we have another view done in brown that is from the front. So we got a back view, we have a front view, and then I have a third, which is done in orange, that's kind of from the side. So when I did this particular version of it, I did it on tracing paper so you can kind of see through. And then what I did is I went in and kind of picked out the best things that I liked to kind of come up with an interesting view. So what I ended up with is this here. So that's just a basic outline. Got sections from three different views. We've got the 3/4 view, we have the back view here, and we have a front view there, kind of put together to make one image. And then this was kind of the basis for us, and then then we can come back in and finish it out with, you know, a background of some sort, whether it be on a table or a stage or something like that. So those are the two different ways that you can go about doing it. So how we're going to do this is you're going to do two different thumbnails like we usually do and come up with an idea. I would say do one version of it to where you are working with an object, and maybe do one version where you are working with a person. So that way you can kind of get two different looks to see how it's going to work out. Or, you know, if you have a really killer idea for some objects, maybe look at it from different angles and put them together. But ultimately, what we're going to end up with is a drawing that we do in colored pencils. And what we're looking for is we want it to be very geometric and very angular, whether it's a smooth object or not, it doesn't matter. And we want to kind of build different layers up, and that way we can have a nice rich color. I could probably go into this with some other color to brighten it up a little bit, but this is where this one ended up for now. You know, a drawing is never done, it just stops in an interesting place. It's a Picasso quote. So for now, this is what we're looking at. So again, we're going to start out with some thumbnails, and hopefully we end up with something that is interesting. So good luck.